Hey, do you want to build a stronger family, create a better life? Well, that's what Divorce with Heart is all about. It's a show where I guide you along your divorce and co-parenting journey using the heart's wisdom, intuition, and legal expertise. So sit back, take a deep breath, relax. My name is Gina DiPrima. Let's get started. Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me. This is episode 35 of Divorce with Heart and Conscious Co-Parenting. And you're with me, Gina DiPrima, your host. So today I want to talk about what happens when your child decides to reject the other parent. And I want to keep the focus particularly on older kids, the teenagers, maybe even some of the preteen, but like the later, like the real mature kind of 12-year-olds, that kind of a thing. Not to say that it doesn't happen with younger children, because of course it does. But for the purpose of today's conversation, I want to focus on those kids that are a little older, mature, trying to find their own way, flexing their freedom and their independence, coming into their own little person, their own identity, even more so, and feeling righteous and justified in everything they think, say, and do. And, they get this idea that they don't have to follow the access schedule anymore. They don't have to go over and visit the other parent anymore. They don't have to share their time anymore, that kind of thing. So that's what I want to talk about. So some do's, some don'ts, and both if you are the parent that is being rejected, and also if you're the other parent, you're not the one that's being rejected, but you're the other one who, maybe you feel like you're kind of stuck in the middle of what's going on. And it happens a lot. So that's what we're going to talk about. But before I get into that any further, I, of course, want to just address a few announcements. And thank you. Thank you again for listening, for tuning in, for sharing this episode, for talking about Divorce with Heart with friends, family, for joining the Facebook group. It just means so much to see this audience grow and to see this mission grow and build. And, because what it's all about at the end of the day is breaking up better, right? It's about putting the heart back into a situation, in an equation where it just it doesn't exist anymore, or is almost non-existent. And in doing so, it's the idea of taking ownership and being able then to not only have a better breakup experience as you go through it, but also to create a better, more balanced, stronger life on the other side of the breakup. I think, for so long now, the paradigm around breakups has been all about win-lose, the battle, take him for everything he's got kind of mentality. And that's really what we're trying to change here. Not just for your own individual sake, but for the sake of your children and for the sake of your family, and ultimately for the sake of all of us as a society as a whole. So, it's just so important to me, everything that we do here. And I just want to say thank you for being here, for listening, for helping to drive this movement in any way that you can. And if you haven't already left a review on iTunes, please do, because I do read them all. And it really helps to keep me on track and let me know that you're listening and, that this is working, that what we're talking about here is resonating with you and that it's helpful. So please do that if you haven't already. And also, it's been a while since I mentioned this, so I'm just going to throw it out there again. I have crafted 2 free guides for you. All you have to do is give me your name and your email to jump on my email list, and you get those 2 free guides, right? I know you've seen it before. It's on almost every website these days. I constantly run into it myself, but that's what I have. I have 2 free guides. One is about choosing the right lawyer, and you can get that guide off of my law page website, which is www.deprimalaw.com, DEPRIMALAW.com. And again, all you need to do is there's a pop-up, put in your name, your email, and you'll be part of the list, which would be really good. I'll give you a lot of information in the future that way, keep you in the loop on these shows, and you'll get a free guide designed to help you pick the right lawyer for whatever the level of circumstance that you're going through. And the second free guide that I have is more geared around surviving the emotional battle of divorce, right? It's like an emotional battle type survival guide. And that you can find on my show page right off of the Inflow Radio website. So if you go to the Inflow Radio website, you navigate to the drop-down list of all the shows, you'll find my show page, same idea there. So definitely check that out, because getting on the email list is going to be super important. I'm going to be making a lot more announcements there, as well as in the Divorce with Heart Facebook group. But just, if you want to be in the know and get some extra little tidbits, pieces of advice and healing, then I'd love to have you on the list. So go ahead and grab those 2 free guides. Okay, so let's just jump right in here now on our subject about parenting and what do you do when you have this older child that, doesn't all of a sudden doesn't want to be part of the access arrangement or part of that parenting agreement that you probably so carefully helped to negotiate while you were going through the process, or maybe conversely, you felt like you had it shoved down your throat. But in any case, there's an arrangement, there's something you've been following, some kind of a parenting plan. Maybe it's been for several years now, maybe not. Maybe it's been for a shorter period of time. But the idea is that you as the parents were, the parties to the action, had your hand in making the terms of that agreement or that order or that plan. Like I said, whether you perceived it to have been completely, voluntary and consensual, or whether you felt like you were forced into it. The reality is it came down to you as a parent and your ex as a parent. And it was an agreement. Actually, 99.9% of the times it's an agreement. Sometimes there's a trial and the judge gives an order, right? But there's something you're supposed to be following. The kids are obviously impacted and related to this because it impacts everything that they do, their daily lives, where they sleep at night, where they eat their breakfast, where they eat their dinners, who helps them with their homework, who helps them take them to their activities. I mean, it impacts every aspect of their life, but they often don't have the say in creating the plan that parents do while it's being created. And I say that even from the perspective as an attorney who represents a ton of kids at all different ages. I've done it for years. And even though we give children a voice when these agreements or orders are being reached, at the end of the day, and I hope you understand this and can appreciate this, at the end of the day, no matter how much of a voice we give to the kids, it's ultimately within the zone of authority and control of the parents and with the help of the judge. And what I mean is, if I'm just going to put it out there as bluntly as I can, there's many times when I, as an attorney for the children, will advocate a position of what my client may or may not want. But just as, in an intact family that isn't going through a breakup, we don't always give children what they want. We as parents give children what we think that they need and what we think will be best for them and their ultimate growth and development. Well, when you're going through a breakup and you're through the court system, it's no different. At least in theory, it is no different. So I have been in that situation where I've advocated for what my client, the child, would have wanted, and it's trumped by the parents' vision and desire and what the parents can ultimately come to terms with and agree on as being best for the child. So that's why I say that even though we give children a voice here, and it does have weight, it is not the ultimate deciding factor, that is still within the authority of you as parents. So you've got this situation, you've worked hard on getting those terms, you've been following it, and now all of a sudden you've got your child, a teenager, maybe he's a teenage son, and, he just says, I'm done with this. I'm done with it. I'm not doing it anymore. I don't want to go over there anymore. This schedule sucks, right? If I'm going to talk the way that they would normally, or a little bit closer to how they talk, I'm done with it. I want to be with my friends. I don't want to be inconvenienced. I mean, the list can go on and on as to the reasons why. And what an older child will do is essentially vote with their feet. That's what you'd commonly hear in lawyer speak and judge speak, is even though we know that courts ultimately have the authority to have jurisdiction and make decisions that can dictate and control where a child goes and on what days and how that child spends his time, the reality of that is that the older the child is, we know that children just vote with their feet, that they do just kind of, say, the heck with it. I'm not doing it. And you're stuck with a situation of now what, right? I mean, what do? You might be a mom who is, I don't know, 5'4", maybe you're just 120 pounds. You're dealing with your 16-year-old son who towers over you. He's bigger than you. He's, stronger than you. Very sweet, beautiful kid. But what are you going to do when your son says to you, I'm not going to my dad's anymore? It's not like you can just scoop him up and put him in the car and drive him over there, right? So this is the conundrum. This is what happens. And it causes a lot of stress. It causes a lot of stress, not just for the child who is saying, I don't really care what you, mom, think I need to do, or what the court says I need to do, or what you, dad, think I need to do. I'm going to do my own thing, right? It causes stress for the child. It causes stress for the parent who's having to hear it, because a lot of times that parent is thinking and knows, I don't want to necessarily empower my child to think that, they get to call the shots, right? But you're in this kind of awkward situation. I don't want to think that my child can call all the shots, or empower my child to think that he can call all the shots. But at the same time, there's a lot of fear. I don't want my child to be mad at me. I know that energy comes up a lot in these situations. I don't want my child to be mad at me. Or this whole, well, I can see why he's mad, why he doesn't want to see the other parent. He's justified. And then all of a sudden it triggers in you everything that you may have experienced when you were in relationship with the other parent. Maybe how you were treated during the marriage, how you were treated during the breakup, things that were said to you. It becomes this trigger, and that stuff resurfaces, and it gets kind of all mixed up all together. And then there's this stress that falls on that parent's shoulders of not knowing what to do, how to be the best parent. Because I believe at the end of the day, I've said this before, that's what we all want. We all want to be the best parent that we can be to our kids. It's just not always knowing the right steps to take, right? That's just the way that it is. And then there's stress on the parent who's being rejected, obviously. And I don't even think I need to explain that. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine why that would be stressful. Of course, you have your child no longer wanting to see you. Now, a lot of times this does surface, like I said, in more of the teenage years when kids are trying to, get more independent, flex their authority, that kind of thing. And it's very, 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 very common to see this, of course, when we have a parent whose parenting style might be a little more on the stricter end of the spectrum, right? You have one parent that might be a little more patient, a little more forgiving, a little more lenient, maybe even just a little more absent, physically, mentally, emotionally, maybe. The point is, when you put that together with a teenager sometimes, it can be the mixture for, depending on how you look at it, the perfect storm or a lot of opportunity. Conversely, when you've got the parent who has a lot of rules and more structure and maybe is present, or just maybe just flexing a little more power. I see this happening a lot with fathers. Okay, so maybe it's just that energy of being a father and how that's presented. I'm not sure, but in any event, it's not unusual to see a teenager wanting to pull away from that and go where they have more freedom, more opportunity to do what they want, more opportunity to get away with what they want to get away with, right? And that's the trouble of this. So what do you do? First, in my opinion, and this may upset some of you, but I'm going to put it out there anyways. In my opinion, I don't think that kids of any age, I don't care. And I'm talking kids being 0 to age 18. Okay. After you're 18, you're not a kid anymore, and the court doesn't have jurisdiction over you anymore. But really, kids do not or should not have a right to just reject a parent. They just shouldn't, in my opinion. And what I've seen time and time again is that when a child rejects a parent, inevitably, it circles back around to the other parent. So even though initially you may not be the parent on the side of rejection, the one that's being rejected, remember that. Remember what I'm telling you, because in my 15 years of practicing this, every single time I have seen it circle back around. Every single time. It's just a matter of when. So it does circle back around. So if you're not the parent being rejected, you really have to be careful about what you are doing in this critical time. And I want to dispel a myth here as well. A lot of people come in to see me and talk to me and seem to believe that if their child is 14 years old, all of a sudden they get to make a decision, that it doesn't matter anymore, that, courts are just going to do what their child wants at 14. So my son doesn't want to see his father anymore. Well, so what? He's 14 years old. He doesn't have to. That's wrong. That is a myth. That is untrue. At least I can tell you, certainly that's untrue in the state of New York. There's no magic number. I haven't done the research to tell you if there's a magic number in another state, but my instinct is that the courts are still going to look deeper than the magic number of the age for what is going on and what is ultimately best for the child. So I just want to dispel that belief right away. Okay. And if you are the parent who is latching on to that or thinking again, well, he's 14, well, he's 15, well, he's 16, he doesn't have to go. You could do what you want. I hear this all the time where parents actually say to their children who are of these older ages, well, if you don't want to go, you don't have to go. It's your life. I understand. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. This is what I hear. And that is a mistake. It is a mistake, in my opinion. Okay. Now, of course, the big caveat here is I'm not talking about situations where there really is a bona fide threat of some kind of harm or a safety issue or something like that going on. And that's why the child is rejecting the other parent. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, where for the most part, everything is okay. These are personal issues, personal preferences. I'm not talking about safety issues here. That's totally different. Okay. But if you are that parent and you are saying those kinds of things, and that is how you are acting and how you are behaving, on some level, you're creating a monster. Because again, I have yet to see where it doesn't circle back to that parent. Because implicitly in doing that, you are telling your child, guess what? You're 14, great, you run the roost. Here you go, here's the keys. Do what you want. You are in that moment, in those words, in those gestures, in those actions and behaviors, you are basically giving your authority of parenting away to your child to parent themselves. And that does not end well. That's why they have parents. That does not end well. So remember what I'm telling you in this cautionary tale of how it can circle back to you. Of course, we want to empower our kids. That's why they get lawyers, attorneys for the children, we call them in New York. They're called law guardians elsewhere. We want to hear their voice. We want to empower them, but it's always a question of balance. We have to balance that with the other interests and the greater purpose here in what you were doing as a parent. And if what you were doing as a parent is trying to raise a responsible child, a loving human being who knows how to handle conflict, who knows how to speak his or her mind in a respectful way, who knows how to have his or her needs met, then I'm going to suggest to you that the answer is not to support this kind of rejection. I'm going to reject you energy. I'm going to suggest to you that the answer is not to support this idea that your child may have that I can just withdraw. I can just, ignore. I can just ignore my other parent. It's not the answer, because if you do, you're losing the opportunity there to teach your child. And I believe that everything comes with teaching moments, right? You're losing that opportunity. In doing that, instead of your child learning those things that I just mentioned, problem solving, communication skills, dealing with, adversity, challenges, things they don't necessarily, quote unquote, like, learning how to speak up for themselves, that kind of stuff. Instead of that, you are telling them that it's okay to just turn your back. It's okay to withdraw. It's okay to just, just to do that. And that is really, wouldn't you agree? It's an immature response. And it's not the kind of behavior that ultimately yields a lot of success in life in general. Because imagine you're now having a child. What happens to that child when he's in his 20s and he's got this great job he loves and he doesn't like his boss? Well, he hasn't learned then how to deal with that kind of situation, has he? Because what he's learned in the past is you don't like something, you can just turn your back on it. Okay? And I know that that's not the lesson that you probably want your children to be having. So again, like most things, it starts at home. When you start to hear or feel or see your child just rejecting the other parent, and it isn't a safety issue, don't step into that friend role. Don't step into that friend role and say, yeah, it's okay, you don't have to do it, because you're missing the opportunity for growth. And ultimately, you're running a huge risk of that turning back around and biting you, where, later on in life. Because again, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that happen and circle back. I don't know why, but it does. And so if you are the parent, okay, that is the one who's getting rejected, what are some things that you can do? Well, don't allow yourself to be rejected. And I know you're like, what are you talking about? I didn't allow it in the first place. I can hear you screaming in my mind as I say that sentence. But no, sometimes when a parent is on that receiving end of the rejection, the pain, the anger takes over, the confusion takes over. And I see parents doing things that I know that they're not proud of doing. I know that they have regrets for it. And it may not even be things that they're doing. It may be things that they're saying, right? I've seen this where all of a sudden the parent stoops down to that teenager's level and will send nasty texts back to the child, or threats back, or messages that are criticizing the child's character or who he or she is, and then withholding property and threats like that. And when you do that, again, you're not helping the situation. You are giving your child more of a justifiable reason to reject you. You're giving them something where they can basically hang their hat on and say, look, Dad's a jerk. And so don't do it. As hard as that may be, catch yourself. Catch yourself first. Have somebody in your corner. Have a counselor. Have a coach. Have somebody in your corner that you can talk to so that you can get these emotions sorted through, so you can feel what's going on, so it doesn't come out in this way that's going to basically further antagonize your teenager against you, right? Don't take any drastic steps either. Okay. If they say to you, you know, screw you, Dad, I'm not going to see you anymore. Screw you, Mom, I don't like you anymore. I don't like your boyfriend. I'm done. I'm out of here. I don't have to see you. Mom says I don't have to see you anymore. Whatever the case may be. If that's what you're hearing, don't take some kind of drastic step and go ahead and say, fine, you said you're not going to see me anymore? Well, guess what? I pay for the cell phone. Ping, bam, boom. It's cut off. You're not going to see me anymore? Well, that's fine. I'm going to change the locks on the door and I'm going to gather up all your stuff and I'm going to kick it all out to the curb. Don't do stuff like that. And I know that these things that I'm saying might sound drastic, but they're real. They're real because, again, when people, myself included, when emotions get the best of us, we don't show up and act our best. That's the simplest way that I can say it. So, right, even though these examples I'm saying may sound to you to be outlandish, these examples are real. These examples are things that have happened, that I have witnessed, that I have been a part of. So these are things that people do. Not proud of it. They would regret it, I'm sure, in the end. But it's that whole idea of acting and doing and saying without thinking, at least not thinking clearly. And it's easy to see how that sort of response would then escalate the behavior. So that's where we're at on that. Let's see, I'm just checking over my notes here. Did I miss anything that I wanted to add to that? Oh, yes, this is huge. This is a huge point that I wanted to make sure I got out. It's another thing that I've just noticed as a correlation. I don't know the rhyme or reason behind it. I don't know what the researchers would say behind it, but it's something that I've concluded through my experience over the years. The longer you allow a child to reject another parent, obviously the more that child digs in and the harder it is to repair that relationship. And let me back up. I'll tell you what I've noticed in terms of the reason why, because kids get afraid. Kids get afraid. Even the kids that show up as being, really tough, really rooted in what they want, 100% stubborn, they get afraid. And what I mean is they get afraid of what they anticipate the parent's response or reaction to be to them. The longer it goes. So they go from that point of saying, I am not going to have this relationship with you anymore. I don't want to see you anymore on Wednesdays. I don't want to spend my weekends with you anymore. And the longer that goes, the more they dig in and the less they even know why. It's not logical anymore. There's no real reason for it. They're not justified. They can't even put their finger on anything anymore. And it's just becomes this whole thing of, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to see my dad anymore. I don't even want to go to dinner. I don't even want to meet him at, whatever. For some reason, the Olive Garden's popping in my mind. Anyhow, I don't even want to go there. And even though you can sit there and you could say to the child, and they could think about it logically, well, what do you mean? Let's just use the Olive Garden. You're at the Olive Garden. What's going to happen? You can't do anything. You're in a public place, that kind of thing. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? The point is, they just won't want to go. They'll fight you even more on it. It'll become much more difficult. And the reason why is because they become so afraid. Because I think, again, it's my opinion, I think they feel also the sense of guilt, the sense of remorse, and a sense of regret for ever having done what they did, forever having said what they said, forever having wanted to think about that whole rejection thing to begin with. And that's the trouble. So act swiftly if you find yourself in this situation. If you're receiving the rejection, don't do anything to otherwise antagonize and escalate it. Always come at your child with love in your heart, with forgiveness, with, letting your child know that you're still there. Don't withdraw yourself from their life. Send them texts. Text them every day. Hi, how are you? I love you. I'm still here. Let's get together and have a chat. Something like that. If you are the other parent, again, validate how your child's feeling, but don't fully get in there and support them. Don't come at it with this energy of, well, you can do what you want to do. It'll hurt in the end. So I hope that makes sense and you found this helpful. I did mean to address questions, but of course I talked too long. So I'll tell you what, at the top of the next episode, I will address questions first before we dive into the next one. So thank you for joining me. Again, I'd love to get a review from you in iTunes, chat with you more through Divorce with Heart and Facebook, and see you on my email list. Take care. Have a great week. Thank you so much for joining me today. Come back next week and be sure to visit my website at dpremalaw.com to book a call, or let's connect on Facebook at dpremalaw, where you can join my group for more support. Please remember that the information shared is for general and entertainment purposes only, and that by calling in or messaging me, we are not creating an attorney-client relationship, and my advice is not intended to be legal advice. For specific legal advice, please contact a lawyer in your jurisdiction.
This show is brought to you by InflowRadio.com, the best curated talk radio network for personal development, wellness, spirituality, and conscious business.